Hey Waffle Gang, I do hope you are well. My name is Mark and today we're checking out some more relationship stories, maybe mixed with some Am I the Arsehole as well. And if you do love a Reddit story, why not consider hitting that like, subscribe, maybe that notification bell too. But let's crack on with today's first story. Now, today's first story comes from a throwaway account titled Me 22 Male with my ex 23 Female. For 8.5 years, she left and came back. We started dating in 8th grade. We went to high school and college together and dated the entire time. We graduated college this summer. After college, she got into grad school in our hometown, 6 hours away from our college town, and I have already accepted a job in our college town. We agree that I will move to our hometown in 1 year, put in a work transfer so we can live together during her second and final year of grad school. She stays with her family for the summer before grad school starts, this past June to September. And so during this time, we are long distance. She becomes noticeably irritable and distant. She comes to visit me in our college town where I have been working after a couple of months and says we should take a break while she goes to grad school. I fall apart crying and she changes her mind. A couple of weeks later, she starts texting me saying she doesn't feel like talking to me anymore and that she loves me but isn't in love with me. This is all through a text message. I asked to call and she allows me to, a few hours later. I told her it would hurt me too much to ever speak to her again and that I forgive her and say a final goodbye. I fell apart, of course. I missed work for a week. I'm completely unstable for over a month. I don't eat or sleep really at all. She makes no effort to contact me for 10 weeks. And suddenly, when I'm starting to heal and accept that she isn't the one for me, she begins contact. She tells me over Facebook not talking is too hard for her. I delete the message with no reply. She tries texting 4 days later and I block her number. 3 days after that, she has her brother contact me. That's when she cracks. It is finals week in her first quarter of grad school and she drives 6 hours the night before her final to tell me she made a huge mistake. This occurred this Wednesday. I told her I don't believe her and that she needs more time to think about what she really wants and if it's me she wants. I told her I was skeptical and don't believe she loves me, pointing out that she said she wasn't in love with me. She doesn't remember saying that and claims that she has spent weeks thinking about it and regrets her decision. During our time apart, she said she went on one terrible date and did not leave for another guy. However, I am scared that she is just lonely and nostalgic and will leave me again when she gets bored. She tells me it's not nostalgia and she learned her lesson. I tell her to take a couple more months to think about it and decide if it's really me that she loves. I also tell her how hard the breakup was on me and proceed to condemn our 8.5 year relationship. I told her I had to demonize her and the relationship in order to move on. I laid out all the flaws. I told her how great my life was becoming. I now go to the gym every day and have gotten new hobbies and I'm way more social with friends. What do I do here, guys? Now, maybe this is the Reddit in me talking, but I find it really suspicious that, she requested a break, then quotes later on saying, during our time apart, she went on one terrible date and did not leave for another guy. And it almost feels like, that was the reason she left. She wanted to go date other guys whilst you were long distance or whatever. And I would certainly be looking at this from your point of view and how you've changed during that time. It seems like you've only changed for the positive. So do you really want this relationship back? It sounds like you went through a hell of a time and a lot of pain after she broke up with you, and there's the potential to put yourself through that again. But Monsieur Le Dude says, and quotes, during our time apart, she said she went on one terrible date and did not leave for another guy. And says, do you believe this? I wouldn't. Even if it was somehow verified to be true, I'd still have a hard time believing it. What she did reeks of failing with another guy and returning to her plan B. Let's say it's true. It's certainly understandable. Given how young you were when you started dating, it's understandable to want to branch out to new experiences and you should do the same. Quotes again, what do I do here, guys? And then says, stay the course and keep moving on. You said it best. And quotes, I told her how great my life was becoming. I now go to the gym every day, have gotten new hobbies and am way more social with friends. And then says, there's zero need to compromise such awesome momentum. Keep it up. Used to be prom queen says, my advice is that both of you have been committed too long since you were way too young. You need to have some different life experiences and date some different people. If it's meant to be, you will return to each other. Right now, however, you all don't know if the relationship is really fulfilling or if the sex is actually compatible or if you are what the other wants, because you two do not know anything or anyone different. These types of relationships can be healthy for some. They also can breed codependency on others. I think you should continue with this break and focus on yourself, as you've been doing wonderfully. Kudos to you. Date other people and see what happens from there. You do not have to discount her entirely, just take some space. I hope this helps and best wishes to you. And that was the only couple of comments on that particular post, but then OP did come with an update which said she left and came back, and the update came in 2 years later. Hi guys, I came to this sub out of desperation 2 years ago. I have an update on my thoughts and feelings since then. I, 24 male, dated my ex, 24 female, from ages 13 to 21. 8th grade until college graduation. Let's call her Lily. Lily left me after she got into an Ivy League grad school in September 2016. See the link to the original post above. I was in shock and in some ways still am. She starts contacting me again in early November 2016. I ignore. She showed up unannounced at my apartment, having driven 300 miles from her grad school to where I now live and work. She apologized and tried to reunite. I built up walls already and told her politely no thanks, despite desperately wishing we were still together. I was so broken and sad that her arrival at my apartment enhanced the fantasy that maybe we could work it out. After all, I spent my formative years loving this person and yearned for her. She was my whole world still. I called Lily and asked to meet again around Thanksgiving, since we would both be back in our hometown. We meet, and after I asked specifically, Lily admits she slept with someone. I reply I'm not interested in reuniting. We both go home grieving. Having grown up with Lily's parents and loving them as my own, I get Lily's mother to confess separately to me that Lily tried to contact her prospective new plaything after they slept together, and the new guy told her to get lost, confirming my hunch that I'm Lily's fallback plan. Lily never admitted this to me, but she did later admit that when she left me, she had already been asked out by this new guy and that she wanted to say yes, so she dumped me. The pain is too much. I block her on everything. She tries to make contact several times and I don't respond. My mother dies mid-January 2017. And my father calls Lily's mother to share the news. Lily's mother tells my father that Lily is in a severe depression and has left grad school. I'm lonely and grieving and still in love with Lily, so I visit the day after my mother's funeral. By January, Lily has lost nearly 20 pounds. She was already thin and is borderline catatonic. I go back to my apartment 300 miles away as conflicted as ever. She's in so much pain. Maybe she loves me. It's the narrative that permeates my brain even today. I never took her back, but I never stopped yearning for her. It's been 2 years since all of this happened, and I still wonder if I made the right choice. I think I did, but I also have this tremendous amount of pessimism about people around me. I don't trust my judge of character anymore when I realize the girl I believe to be an angel can abandon me and then come back and try and use me. I've still never met anyone as beautiful as Lily, at least not on the inside. Lily and I have agreed to meet twice since then, and both times were extremely unpleasant. The first being a superficial show of who is more moved on, and the second was me expressing regret over wishing I was a better man throughout the relationship. The ex ended up going back and completing grad school, graduating on time June 2018. I still haven't replaced the hole in my life where Lily was. I push people away because I know they will hurt me. If a girl like Lily can cut me so deeply, the kindest soul I have ever met, then everyone else surely will. I'm still lost, and for all I know, she is too. I know what she did is completely selfish and gross, but it can't overwrite all the good she did throughout my formative years. I am in no contact with Lily, but I love and miss her in my life. I'm wondering how to live life without her, even when I'm in bed with other women. I miss the trust and level of connection I had with Lily. No one knows more about me. No one knows more about her. And I just give you an overview of the comments below that one, and everyone was pretty much just saying, you know, you need to talk to someone, you need to get some therapy before you move on to the next relationship, because they were concerned of the way that OP's built, you know, Lily up to be this person who no one can compete with really, and as no one is going to be able to compete with Lily because he's built her up on such this high pedestal that he's never going to be able to find anyone that's going to replace her. But what do you guys make of this situation? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below, and let's move on to another story. And our next story comes from Throwaway Dinner 344, who asks, am I the arsehole for getting an entire table for myself after my husband and his mum didn't save me a seat? I'll start this off by saying that I, female 32, have been with my husband Bob, male 39, for 3 years, married for 1. His mum has a habit of keeping me out of most of their functions with the excuse of, you work too much. Not true, because sometimes I do make myself available, but yet find myself excluded. Last week, his mum invited us for a celebratory dinner at a restaurant after she completed her recovery. I had things to do that day, I think it was, and kept her and everyone knowing that I'd be there at 8 PM. Bob obviously knew I was coming. Thing is, when I arrived to the restaurant, I saw that the table was full. All chairs had been taken, and I just stood there with complete puzzlement while Bob and his mum just stared at me. His mum then told me that there was no place left for me and that I could either have Bob get up and take his seat or go home. I was so upset, but instead of going home, I just went and took an entire table for me. Bob and his mum watched with their eyes popping out of their heads like they saw something so shocking. Not gonna lie, I did get weird looks from the guests, but so did Bob and his mum. It was awkward in all honesty. I had my dinner, desserts, and then went home. I saw Bob and his mum staring grudgingly while I was making my way out. He got home an hour later and yelled, saying I embarrassed his mum in front of her guests. I yelled, asking what the fuck was I supposed to do after I got denied a seat, and he told me that it wasn't his nor his mum's fault. Guests arrived before me and took all the available chairs. I told him he could have saved me a chair. He said that I could have just left instead, and reminded me that I was a guest and that I shouldn't expect this level of entitlement to be accepted. He then went on about how I ruined the entire dinner for him and his mum with what I did, and has been pouting about it for days now. I don't get it. I really don't. Was my expectation really that entitled? I mean, as his wife, he should have saved me a seat, but clearly I'm missing something here. Now I'm coming into this one kind of like, fair play to you to just go and grab your own table and eat your dinner, sort of like staring across at them whilst eating your dessert. I think that's pretty amazing of you. And they had so many options to correct this issue. They could have pulled up a chair, they could have, booked a table with adequate seating to start with. But the fact that they turned around and chose an option of you just leaving is pretty disgusting to me. And we see a lot of these stories, like enabling mum stories or backing mum up, whatever you want to call it. A couple of them where, they bring their mums on holidays and surprise them at the airport by bringing their mum. And it's like, do you really want to continue life like that? Is your life always like that? I always ask that question when we read these stories. But here it says, not the arsehole. 1, they could have booked a table with the appropriate seating. 2, they could have pulled up a chair and budged up if a random extra guest turned up. 3, they could have split the table into 2. 4, they could have texted you before you got there and said there's an issue with the table. Why are you married to someone who would literally sit there staring at you instead of do something to help and then blame the situation on you? Prudent Border says, not the arsehole. I don't understand why you be with someone who clearly doesn't view you as family. Him being your husband is pretty bad. Not sure if it's always been like this, but wow, that's a horrible way to treat you. OP replies saying, ugh, the family argument is what bothers me. He actually thinks it's the other way around, that I don't consider his family mine, only because I don't try hard enough to be around them. Don't scream I'm scared says, not the arsehole, and I salute you. I could never have done that because I am too much of a chicken, but believe me, if I had been a guest and grasped the situation, I would have stared too, in admiration. OP replies saying, why would I be afraid? I paid out my own pocket, and I think that it's not about fear more than it is about whether or not this was the right thing to do. And one more from Zara, who says, has no one explained why there weren't enough seats for all the invited guests? By their logic, whoever got there last would have to go home since there weren't enough seats. Do you think any of your mum's other guests would have been sent home if you got there first? I don't think so either. This was intentionally done by your mother-in-law to humiliate you, and your husband was in on it. They were only upset because your actions turned the tables on them and made them look foolish instead of successfully humiliating you. You failed to stay properly under their thumb, so your husband is punishing you a different way. I don't know what his end game is. I do know controlling abusive behavior when I see it. Nothing you said even closely resembles a healthy, functional relationship. Not the arsehole in this situation, obviously. Now, I'm going to turn this one to you guys. What would you do in this situation if it was you? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below, and let's move on to another story. And our next story comes from a throwaway account who asks, am I the arsehole for cancelling my daughter's flight when she wanted to leave before my niece's wedding that she was a bridesmaid for? I know the title doesn't sound great, but hear it out. My 54 male niece, Taylor, 26 female, got married a few days ago. My daughter, Vienna, 27 female, was part of the bridal party as a bridesmaid. The wedding has been over a year in planning, and Vienna, of course, knew her role and everything way in advance. She's been hanging around a guy, Matthew, for a while now, but I don't think they're anything serious. Matthew has gone to a different state on a business trip and got into an accident. This all happened a couple of weeks before Taylor's wedding. Vienna found out and had a nervous breakdown, saying that she needs to fly out immediately. Yes, I understand she was upset, but she wasn't thinking straight and unnecessarily worrying. I explained to her that even if she goes, she has to come back before the wedding, but it'd be better if she didn't, as there's a lot of last minute things. She didn't listen and kept saying she's going to go and probably stay there for a while. Both me and my wife tried to explain to her to stay calm and she can go anytime after the wedding. She called up Taylor, my brother, and his wife and told them she wouldn't be able to attend. Taylor understandably didn't take the news well, and his wife made a whole Facebook post saying, some people don't want to see others happy, and isn't it nice when family quits at the last moment? She didn't mention us by name explicitly, but it's obvious what it was about. It pretty much caused nuclear warfare throughout my side of the family, but Vienna wouldn't hear it and booked a flight before the wedding. All of our flyer accounts are linked, so I cancelled her flight. Vienna went insane when she found out, and we had a huge argument. And again, we told her that she really needs to understand how big of a deal this wedding is, as she's part of the bridal party, and some man doesn't overtake a family obligation. I even offered to pay the extra cost so she can reschedule the flight after the wedding, but she blew up at all of us. Vienna did attend the wedding and did all of her duties as a bridesmaid, and thankfully didn't make a show, and all of us thanked her for understanding, but she's pretty much cursed us out, even my brother and his family. Me and my wife tried calling and messaging her after the wedding, but she's not picking up or answering. I do know that she flew out the day after the wedding, so I really don't see what the issue is, but Vienna was clearly mad at us. And we'll start off with Gang, who says you're the arsehole and a huge manipulative one at that. First a-hole for cancelling her flight that she paid for. What the fuck, she's a grown-ass woman, you have no business doing that, and honestly it seems illegal, if not, it's still grossly unethical. In quotes, hanging around a guy for a while now, don't think it's serious, and says it's not up to you to decide how serious a relationship with her partner is. It's obviously serious enough that she wants to immediately fly out and be with him after he had a car accident. In quotes, she was upset and wasn't thinking straight and was unnecessarily worrying. And then says, oh, she was being emotional and needed to calm down. You also don't get to decide what her feelings should be. Bride and groomzilla are also a-holes. A wedding can be missing a bridesmaid. Her role isn't that important. She's not the maid of honor. It's not the end of the world, and it certainly wouldn't ruin Bridezilla and Groomzilla's big day. Putting her on blast on Facebook is disgusting, and then says some man doesn't overtake familial responsibilities. The commenter goes on to say, what about when the family is a bunch of a-holes? And again, you don't get to decide what some man means to her. Honestly, I hope Vienna realizes how awful and toxic you all are. Aurora Burst says you're the arsehole. She's an adult and her partner got into an accident. There are reasons to miss a wedding, and this is one of them. To which Raph replies to that one saying, not to mention the accident apparently happened a few weeks before the wedding. If they'd just let her go in the first place, she could have spent more than enough time with Matthew and come back for the wedding. The hypothetical last minute duties can be done by someone else. Emergencies happen. Obviously, if she had been allowed to visit Matthew immediately and still wanted to skip the wedding after all, that would be completely valid. I just feel like OP created a big part of the problem here himself. Tara says you're the arsehole and literally not a single thing you can say to make any reasonable person think differently. Way to ruin relationship with your daughter. You disregarded her feelings for your own selfish BS. Your need to look good for the rest of the family outweighed actually being good with your family. There will never be a legitimate claim that a wedding is more important than the health and wellness of someone you care about. It doesn't matter whose wedding or what part of the wedding you are involved in. Is it an inconvenience to the rest of the wedding? Yeah, but it doesn't matter at all. And the last one from Giant Pixie, who says, I don't see how you can possibly think you're anything but an arsehole here. This is one of the easiest you're the arseholes I've given. It's not your place to say how serious their relationship is. That isn't your call. It isn't your place to cancel her flights. That's just controlling. Of course she's going to curse you out, messed up and stopped going to be with her partner, which was a massive overstepping of your boundaries. You did that to save face for you, no other reason. Be very hopeful nothing serious has happened, because if he's in a bad way and you cancelled her flight, then you've just lost your daughter. I've seen kids go no contact for far less than that. Common sense really isn't so common these days, it seems. Now, what do you guys make of this one? What would you do if you was in that situation? If you was in the daughter's situation, how would you deal with it? Let us know your thoughts down in the comments below. Now, just a huge thank you from the bottom of my heart for getting involved in today's stories. Your love, support and time always means the absolute world to me, so thank you so much for getting involved. And if you'd like to listen to the podcast version of these, go to mark-narrations.com and pick out your favorite podcasts there. And hopefully I will see you in the next one. Take care, guys, and much love.
Wake up, get up, stretch my legs, eat some breakfast, milk and eggs, brush my teeth up, wash my face, throw my clothes on, start my day. Wake up, I can smell the smoke from the bacon. Let's go, see the sun shining from the windows. Okay, I know that today